Don't you sit around waiting on the Jaguars to draft a wide receiver if here on a Tuesday.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I am Tony Wiggins, your host of Locked On Jaguars. Thank you for joining me here on Locked On Jaguars as you do every single day, because it's your team every day, and we appreciate you making us your first listen. We are free on all platforms. Make sure you like and subscribe and sign in on the YouTube page. Got to straighten up my brim here, trying to look good for you guys today. We're going to talk some wide receivers and how imperative it is for the Jaguars to get Trevor Lawrence. I was about to call him Travis. Trevor Lawrence, some absolute help outside. Now we'll discuss the fact that they have done it already to a certain extent this offseason. And why did they move the way that they move with the wide receivers? So we'll be able to discuss that. Two, do you trust, in segment two, do you trust Trent Baalke and Doug Pederson? Do you trust them enough to trust their evaluation to think that the wide receiver position is where it needs to be? We'll talk about that. And then third, I'll tell you about a guy that I thought was going to be out of here, Laviska Shenault. I think he has a chance now, and I'll tell you, we'll tie it into segment 1 and 2 to really hammer it home as to why I believe that this is what we're going to have when it comes to wide receivers. So we're going to talk about the receiver position as a whole. We're going to talk about do you trust Baalke, and do you trust the fact that, and the reason why I'm asking you about Doug now, you know, Doug Pederson was up in Philly and they passed up Justin Jefferson and they took that other kid, Jalen Reagor, and Jefferson went next, and he's like an all-pro level wide receiver. So my point is was that him? Was it Harry Roseman? And the fact that Trent Baalke has never really put out a real productive receiver in the National Football League, or somebody that he drafted himself. We'll talk about those two things. But first and foremost, how did we get here with the wide receivers? Well, I tell you what happened is at the end of the year last year, I used to say stuff like they need to fix the offensive line and make it great. The first thing that would come out of somebody's mouth would be, yeah, but they need to get 4 wide receivers first and get Trevor some weapons before they do that. And I used to always tell people that it could be a priority position all you want it to be, right? You could think that needs to be the position that has to be addressed the most, all you want to, right? But if the opportunity doesn't present itself, that there's a wide receiver available in the free agency market that was worth a whole bunch of money, or if there wasn't one that was draftable at the very top of the draft, that you'll find a situation where you can't just take your ball and go home. You have to go for what's there, right? And so if you need a gallon of milk, but you're on the bread aisle, you can't snatch a gallon of milk, but you need bread too. So you might as well get the best bread while you're on that aisle. And then when you get over to the milk, that's when you'll get it, right? My thing was always you could walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. So wide receivers, for just about the entire fan base, all they talked about was receivers. So have they done enough? They signed Christian Kirk, gave him a 2 years with $37 million guaranteed. Of course, everybody wants to talk about the 4-year, $76 million contract as a whole. Then they signed Zay Jones, 4 years, I think about $30 million or something like that. And people were scratching their head saying, well, they're not leaving themselves any room, and they're not leaving themselves any room for another receiver. So are they going to move back up into the first round? Are they going to take one at 33? What's going on here? Because now, if you committed that much money to him, and then the Deebo Samuel stuff starts coming out, and they obviously, it doesn't appear that they're going to make any moves with that. Folks are like, how can you go trade all of this stuff for Deebo and then pay him when you've already paid Christian Kirk and you already paid Zay Jones, and you can't do that? What are they going to do at wide receiver? Then at the luncheon for the media, you heard Trent Baalke, and basically you heard Doug Pederson. And this is why I think I lend so much credibility to this statement. You heard Doug Pederson just flat out say, look, this wide receiver class is not that deep. It's not that deep. There's some real good players up front, and there's some real good players at the top. But as you start getting into the depth, it's not a strong wide receiver class. So that made me look at the Jaguar situation and go, I don't think they're taking a wide receiver. One, I think that's why they signed Zay Jones. I think they were going to probably sign Christian Kirk anyway. I now look back because they've been scouting this whole time. They've been scouting this entire time. And the difference between Doug Pederson and, say, a coach who was actually coaching the team that he's coaching now, that he was actually coaching them last year, the difference is Pederson wasn't. So while other coaches are worried about playoffs and worried about all of this stuff, Pederson's probably been meeting with the scouting department earlier than a lot of people who are drafting. And then a lot of other guys got fired and all this. The fact that he didn't work last year and he wasn't promoted from another team means he wasn't really that busy. So he's probably knowing he's going to get a job. He's probably already taken a deep dive into looking at these receivers. So you mix that with Trent, and they know that area is a priority. They have absolutely no doubt that it's a priority. They probably went, you look back how aggressive they were in free agency. They probably said, we better get him now because we're going to help him. Him being Trevor, we can't wait because we don't trust that there's going to be people available to us. So when you're picking one, you're not taking a wide out, especially with the injury to Jameson Williams. And you probably wouldn't do that anyway. If you're picking 33, but you don't think there's depth, that means that you think that anybody worth it is going to be gone because it's also not a strong draft in terms of quarterbacks and all of these other priority positions. Anybody worth it is going to be gone. Anybody worth being picked at 33 is probably going to get picked a little higher because teams, if they feel the same way the Jaguars feel, they're going to go in and they're going to snatch these guys up. So you're not going to take a project or a player that you have questions about at 33 if he's not worth it. And you're also not going to trade up just because you have a need. You're not going to trade up and get a guy who probably wouldn't go that high in another draft if the draft was stronger. Because remember, at the end of the day, it's not about getting your check marks. It's not like you're getting your passport stamped. You're not playing tic-tac-toe. You actually have to have these guys on your team, pay them based on slotted money, regardless if they're as good as the last. Like if you're picking 25th, you got to pay him the same that you're going to pay the 25th pick last year with a little bump and increase, and just about what you're going to pay the 25th pick next year. But they might not be equal in talent. So at the end of the day, why would you move up and not only pay a guy like that, but why would you give away assets to go get a guy who's probably not going to be as good as, when you look at the big picture, as the same people playing that position that you can get next year or the year before, or wouldn't be as talented as whatever player that you pick at that spot. So the Jaguars now, in hindsight, what they did was they assessed the fact that they had to get receivers. They assessed the fact that getting Zay Jones, he's better than anybody we're going to be able to get at 33. And he's definitely, of course, better than anybody we're going to be able to get at 65 and 70. So we're going to use those spots on other positions. And we need to keep everybody we have now. Let me see what I can do with Laviska Shenault, says the new head coach and the wide receivers coach. If we have a better plan, he'll play better. Maybe that's what happened, because I heard that Visca was all but gone when I was talking to some people at the Senior Bowl. You haven't seen anything like that. So with all of this movement, the Jaguars said, nope, we're going to add these two guys. We're going to keep him. And we're just not going to be able to fix everything all at one time. So I'm of the opinion that you guys thinking that they're going to take a wide receiver, a deductive reasoning, I just don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to tell you whether or not the thought process of Trent Baalke and head coach Doug Pederson should be questioned, even if it's just a little bit. You're damn right it should be questioned, and I'll tell you exactly why. And I'm not doing it just to start trouble, but I'm just flat out telling you, man, a little spotty history, and I don't know who's responsible for everything, but we'll get into it in segment 2 here on Locked On Jaguars. I got to tell you about something though, man, from Athletic Greens. AG1. Listen, I was trying to look for and find something that could give me the type of gut health that I need. And what I mean by gut is my stomach and my digestive system and all the vitamins and nutrients that I absolutely need. Now, when you're 53 like me and you have a little bit of medical history, it seems like there's not enough things and products that you can put in your body to make you feel good. What if I told you all you got to do is take one scoop and put it in a cup of water, a glass of water, and drink it every single day, and you're going to get 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. And you're going to get a burst of energy too. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all of that stuff. It's AG1. That's what it is, man. And I'm telling you, it is the best thing that I've had. It's green too, so I feel like Popeye. When Popeye used to get those that spinach and stuff like that. I just feel good, man. When I do it every day, I feel like Superman, and it has absolutely kicked in and worked. And I love the stuff, and you will too if you're just like me. All right. So to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase, because it's time for you to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. What you need to do is go to athleticgreens.com/NFL network. That's right. Visit athleticgreens.com/NFL network. And you make sure that what you do is you take ownership of your health with Ultimate Daily Nutritional Insurance. That's right. That's exactly what you're going to do. Make sure you check out AG1 at athleticgreens.com/NFL network to take advantage and take ownership over your health and pick up the daily nutritional insurance. All right, man. So Tony Wiggins here on Locked On Jaguars. We appreciate you making us your first listen. We're talking wide receivers. And now we're going to get into the part where we discussed what may have predicated the Jaguars to be so aggressive in the wide receiver department. They also, I'm going to add this, they also signed Evan Ingram to a 1-year, $10 million deal because their receivers that they signed aren't really big guys. Zay Jones is average size, but Christian Kirk is a little bit on the shorter side at 5'11", but so everybody's wondering who's going to play outside, Well, if you look back at the Philadelphia Eagles, they use Zach Ertz a lot of times outside. My friend Mike Kay reminded us of that. He covered the Eagles for a long time. He talked about how they aligned Zach Ertz and the situations that they used him in. And I don't think that Evan Ingram is really your regular inline type or H-back type wide receiver. You're going to stick him in the box to have him blocking. I really think he's a guy who's a red zone target, who's a big slot guy, or a guy that you put outside. I think he's versatile. And when you think about Doug Pederson, I can't help but thinking about the fact that he won a Super Bowl. He really did it without dynamic wide receivers. And he also coached a long time with Andy Reid. You take away Tyreek Hill and the little short time that Andy Reid had T.O. in Philly, there was guys like Freddie Mitchell and those guys. And it seems like their tight end always led them in receiving, or they had a running back that they throw a lot of screens to with Bryant Westbrook and guys like that. So it's not that a coach is always exactly what his mentor is, but there are some principles that you can obviously attach to Doug Pederson because of his affiliation with Andy Reid. That means that Evan Ingram is going to get a shot to catch a lot of balls here and really be on a prove it sort of deal. That means that a healthy Travis Etienne is going to have a field day doing his best Bryant Westbrook impersonation, if you will. It also means that we have to make sure that we trust the assessment. I don't know if it was Howie Roseman in Philly or if it was Doug Pederson or if it was a combination of two that thought that really watched tape and thought Jalen Reagor was a better player than Justin Jefferson. They chose Reagor at 21. Jefferson was chosen at 22. And the proof is in the pudding. You already know who the better player is. So for me, it's just a simple fact of making sure that the guys who make the assessments are on point before you trust that whatever they decided to do, you understand why they did it, but don't just automatically assume it works because it sounds good. You have to really, somebody said, when you read a book, don't believe it until you know the history of its author, right? So if Doug Pederson says that this draft isn't loaded with wide receivers, I'll take his word for it and understand that that's why he moved the way he did, and that's why he did the things that he did. But that doesn't mean he's right. That's why I'm talking about that situation in Philly, because he probably could have been wrong. He was wrong about that if he had anything to do with it. And then when you look at Trent Baalke has never drafted, ever, in San Francisco, all the success they had or whatever. He's never personally drafted anybody that had a big career at the wide receiver position, that even had a real good career at wide receiver. Now, he's drafted the hell out of some tight ends. He's been around some tight ends. The Delaney Walkers, I heard he had a lot to do with the scouting him. Of course, Vernon Davis was a no-brainer because it was an early pick. But tight ends are a big, big part of what Doug Pederson wants to do. So I think they'll probably, in that third round area, and I wouldn't even be shocked if they did it in the early second round, to just take the best tight end in the draft. Or at least in that third round area, they'll probably be able to get somebody and it'll work out for them. But I don't think that there's a wide receiver based on where they're positioned and what they have said that they feel and believe. I don't think there's a guy that they're going to take. I really don't. I can imagine George Pickens probably being there at 33, but with the run on the receivers being expected to be what it is, you're looking at teams like Green Bay that have 2 first-round picks, and then you're looking at a team like KC that has 2 first-round picks right at the end of the draft that are dying for a big target at wide receiver. So I don't think a guy like that might get to 33, even if the Jaguars have him on the board. They said they have stricken like 20 to 25 guys off because of character concerns. So, and Pickens is known to be a little different. So he might have been one of those dudes. I just don't know. But I don't think that they're trusting that someone that they believe they can get is going to be where they're picking. They're picking way up high. So it's not going to be 1. At 2, I think they may have their eyes on someone else, Quay Walker or somebody like that, but a linebacker. And I think the positional value and the value board may line up better for them picking someone else. But then I think they're going to come back and they're going to start touching the offensive line again, especially if they don't do it early, maybe at the top of the third round. So, and then they need a safety. I just think that if you listen to what they said and then see what they did, that it sets up that they don't like this wide receiver class. And if you're waiting on them to take one, you might be waiting all night, and maybe they'll take a developmental guy. I heard there's a kid at San Diego State that's pretty good, the secure kid. I've heard a lot about Alec Pierce at Cincinnati and whether or not he'll be there. I don't know. But I would think that the Jaguars would probably, based on what they said, unless it was some sort of a smokescreen, would probably be looking in another direction. One reason they might look in another direction is because they're looking in their own cupboard and they realize that someone who a lot of people had written off shouldn't have been written off, and that's Laviska Shenault. Can Laviska Shenault go back to turn back the hands of time and go back to being the Laviska Shenault of his rookie year that had a lot of potential? Possibly. Can Doug Pederson and his new staff do more to change and take advantage of Laviska Shenault's ability? If they do that, man, this will give them a leg up on developing that wide receiver room. We'll talk more too about who else they may have to lean on, and we'll do it in just a second here on Locked on Jaguars on a Tuesday. I almost forgot what day it was. I tell you what, I don't forget to go and make the wagers in the right place, and that's betonline.net. Betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats, sports info. I did not think the Brooklyn Nets were going to get swept, but they did. And if you bet that Boston was going to win that series in 4 games, boy, I bet you got paid. So you can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more from the trends and action at BetOnline, because BetOnline is where the game starts. If you're driving around on these bad auto parts, man, you ought to be ashamed of yourself, because I have told you several times about rockauto.com. Been in business for 2 decades. It's a family-owned business. Great American company. And Rock Auto is a family-owned business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every single customer, and they have everything you could need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even carpet. That's right, new carpet for your car to get that old raggedy smell out of there from you eating all of that food while you're driving around. You need to go explore the easy to use website today to find solution to all your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right Locked On in there "How did you hear about us" box, so they know we sent you. Because you family, man, I want you to save some money, because they have an amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need. It is at rockauto.com. And you guys are rock solid for joining me here on Locked On Jaguars every single day and making us your first listen. We're eternally grateful for that. The draft is just a few days away. Our ultimate mock draft that Locked On has done with Odyssey is available. All the picks are out. I made 2 picks. That's right. First round, 2 picks. So figure it out, man. Go check that out on the Locked On NFL YouTube page or wherever you get your podcast. Also, our draft special is coming up Thursday, which is on draft night, April 28th, where we're going live, man, starting at 7 o'clock on the Locked On NFL page, YouTube page. You can check us out. All the draft coverage from all the Locked On experts around the country. And we're going to lay it down for you and give it to you like nobody else, because that's what we do, because you all make us your first listen. And it's your team every day. Now, your team, the Jaguars, are sitting at number 1, and then at 33, and as I've said, 65 and 70. And it doesn't look like, in my opinion, based on their activity, that what they're going to do is take a wide receiver. We talk so much about receivers and so much about getting Trevor weapons. The Jags jumped out the window, man, as soon as free agency opened up. They made a lot of people around the country mad, too, because a lot of people believe that, all of the stuff with the receivers demanding all of this money and making a mass exodus, that they overpaid for Christian Kirk. I have pushed back on that a little bit, and I said, have you seen Kenny Galladay's contract and his production with the Giants last year? The Giants did this. That was 4 years, $72 or $76 million or whatever, and Galladay was awful last year, and he had been hurt like 2 of the 3 previous years in Detroit, and they gave him that huge deal. Folks ought to be arguing with the Giants about that and not arguing with the Jaguars, because they had to do what they had to do. But the reason why the Jags jumped out the window like that is because I think it matches up with their assessment that there was not a lot of guys worth picking in the draft and using your resources on these guys when you can get better players in other areas. One thing they have to do, though, in my opinion, I think this new staff has probably gotten into Laviska Shenault's ear a little bit and told him, son, we're going to give you a chance. We're going to give you a chance, and everything that happened to you and with you and about you and for you last year, we're going to forget about it. We're going to give you a fresh start to show us that you are the guy that we saw 2 years ago. And there's a chance, since that in that draft when they chose Jalen Reagor, that Doug Pederson had an independent evaluation of Laviska Shenault, and he may have liked him. He may have liked him then. And so it's like, we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he was probably the benefit of bad coaching and probably the benefit of bad scheme. And I don't know what Sanjay Lyle had him doing last year. I saw videos of him in Dallas. They were toting bricks off the field and all of this. It just blew my mind, right? So maybe, just maybe, what they'll do is give him a bigger shot. It kind of makes you question a little bit, too. And this is a hard one, because I was one of the guys that was on the other side of this. In hindsight, if you knew that there weren't a bunch of guys in the draft, why didn't you make a bigger effort to keep DJ Chark? At least for a year. Why wasn't there a tender or a tag or something put on him so that he just didn't walk away from this organization for nothing? and now he's in Detroit where he's got $10-12 million. You could have kept him here for that money. You had the money. Did they really just assess that DJ Chark really wasn't that good of a player? Who made that assessment? Trent Baalke? Doug Pederson? Did he take Baalke's word? What was it? And why did it happen? We've seen guys have injuries before that people didn't give up on. That dude is 6'4", 210 pounds. If I had known that they thought that this was a weak draft class for receivers, I actually would have considered them holding on to DJ Chark for 1 year, a smart move. So this is the kind of stuff that we're going to play over and over again in our head when we're trying to figure out, do we trust them? Are they going to give Laviska Shenault another chance? Because I'll tell you what, one of the teams that I heard that could have been a possible destination for him, they added another receiver already via trade. So there wasn't any tampering going on. There wasn't anything like that. It's just that it was basically like, where would he go and where would he want to play? Well, when you looked around at the teams that had a big need for wide receiver, the Patriots were one of them, right? So the Patriots have some attrition in their staff and then also in their front office, and then they go out and get Devontae Parker. I would be right in probably thinking that they probably were one of the teams that my friend speculated that would be interested in Laviska. And maybe they also were one of those teams that liked him also when he came out, because we have to remember, during this evaluation process, that's usually what happens. Teams just don't like the guys they end up with in the draft, right? Teams like a whole bunch of guys. And in the process, they put them through an eval, and in the eval, they have a book on him, and they know, hey, we're running into him again one day. I'm going to remember what I thought about him. And sometimes they have to overlook what happens to a guy once he actually gets into the NFL and once he starts playing. And last year, without this being a shock or surprise to anybody, the Jaguars put out a lot of product that people are going to forget and blame it on the staff and blame it on the folks who were here last year. All right, man, I ain't going to blame you guys for joining us here. I am going to sit here and take a sip of this so I won't keep coughing, but I won't blame you guys for sticking with us here at Locked On Jaguars and joining us every day and making us your first listen, because without you, there's no us. It's your team every day. The draft is a couple of days away. All the rave. I've done more interviews this week. I promise you, I've done more interviews this week than I've done my whole life. And everyone wants to know about what's going on. And my answer is always, I have no clue. I think I might have an idea, but I cannot definitively say anything because, and by the way, this is kind of what you want. This means people are doing their job. And in the past, I've always said, look, I appreciate the leaks, but at some point, and you guys remember this, I said at some point, if the Jaguars are ever going to be good, the leaks have to stop. The information that gets out has to stop. And we're seeing that happen. And I think it's because of the leadership. And I think it's just a new way of doing business. And I think maybe somebody probably realized the way they were doing business in the past needed to change, because it wasn't helping them any. It was actually hurting them. So you guys hang in there. We got 2 more days till the pick. And remember, it's your team every day. Make sure you hit like and subscribe and join us on the Locked On Jaguars podcast. We appreciate you, man. Y'all take care. Until tomorrow, take care of each other.